Post-election, the narrative here is all about an expansionary fiscal policy with tax cuts and more spending. We've seen stocks and the dollar rally. We've seen bonds sell off and yields climb. What are investors getting wrong in front-running policy like this?
Well, a lot of things they're getting right. I think if some of these policies are followed through on, the biggest one I think are the corporate tax cuts and the ability to bring money back into the United States at perhaps a 10 to a 12% tax rate. I mean, those monies are numbered in the hundreds of billions, and to the extent that they come back and buy back stock, then there's a definite impetus. So I think that's a positive. What they're getting wrong, I think, on the longer term is that there are a lot of negatives in terms of his anti-globalization policies. Many of them are anti-trade to a certain extent. Many of them, promote a strong dollar, which sounds good, but ultimately puts U.S. corporations at a disadvantage. And so, there's some negatives as opposed to positives in all of this, and none of it of which we know will come to fruition with 100% probability.
Right. Of course, the devils remain in the details here. And what will cause the market to reassess and start pricing in the long-term negative effects of that stronger dollar, for instance? What would be the catalyst?
Well, I don't think anything in the short term, right? Because he's not even been, sworn in. That takes place in January. I think, perhaps some statements by some of his appointees in the cabinet, perhaps something that the market interprets negatively in terms of capital. But for the moment, smooth sailing. I would say, though, that we've sailed upwards in terms of in the green by 5, 6, 7% on most stocks in the market, and one could argue that much of the positives have been built in. I think, for instance, that their claims for 3 to 4% real growth are specious, and the old standard, which was 10 or 20 years ago, it is really being affected by sort of structural factors that can't be dismissed. And I'm looking for a 2% economy, not a 3 to 4% economy. And to the extent that investors begin to agree with me, then perhaps their expectations for profit growth are diminished to some extent.